Hello, my name is Bogdan, and today I'll be showing you guys how you can build yourself your own computer. To start this off, you will need to acquire, either buy or borrow, a set of materials or components that are required for a computer. These include the biggest component, which is the case, the motherboard, which houses and communicates with all the components. You have the CPU, which is the central processing unit. It calculates everything that you don't see that's in the background, all the number crunching, everything that needs to be done in the background. During that process, it heats up, so it needs a CPU cooler. That's what this is. It dissipates the heat and cools it off so that the system doesn't overheat. This right here is a GPU, or a graphics processing unit. It processes all the video output that you see on your monitor. These two things right here are your storage. This is an SSD, which is an electrical type of storage. It's digital. Whereas this is a hard drive, which has a disk spinning inside of it. Right? This is faster but more expensive. This is cheaper but lasts a shorter amount of time. And this is RAM, which is short-term storage, to where the processor communicates with it rather than taking a way longer route to the hard drive. So to start this off, you take your motherboard. The only tools you will need is a screwdriver to set this whole thing up. You start with your motherboard outside of the box. You take your processor, which has a small golden arrow on the corner. Then there's another arrow on the motherboard which indicates the orientation you need to place it. You open the socket and you pop the processor inside. No need for force, you just let it drop, and then you lock it into place. Next, you take RAM. And you make sure the gap lines up with the notch over here. When you do so, you make sure it's open. See, these are closed. You open them and you line it up. And you slide it in and firmly press till you hear 2 clicks. Do that with both of your sticks, or if you have 4, you put 4. Any amount fits, as long as you have the appropriate slots for them. Next, we will use digital storage. This is an NVMe PCIe storage hard drive. It uses a 16-bit lane, which is very close to the hard drive. So what you do is you slide it in at an angle, and then you press it down, screwing it into place with this bolt. No need to over tighten it, just to hold it in place. Once these components are secure, you will want to add your cooler. Coolers come with thermal paste pre-applied on them. Usually, sometimes you will need to buy extra thermal paste or compound. It better dissipates the heat between the CPU and the cooling block. These are made out of copper so that it dissipates heat easier. There's many different ways of installing coolers. AMD, which is the company that makes this, usually has the same system for all of their products, in which it has 2 clamps and a resistance band like this that knocks it into place. After that, you plug in the power for the CPU, which is this one. this wire will be plugged in at a later time. Then we set this to the side and bring over the case. The case is what holds all the components inside, and there's a power supply that I pre-routed, but you would need to attach it with 4 screws on the back and route the power wires. Each wire has a different ending to it, corresponding to a different part on the computer. So what you do, there are these things called standoffs, which are mounting brackets for your motherboard. Slides in. And sits on the mounting brackets. Then you plug in the 24-pin connector, which is the main power source for the motherboard. You plug in the CPU connector, which is the power for the CPU. All of these wires come out of the power supply. Read your own owner's manuals to better understand how your components correlate with each other. Once you have those 2 main connectors powered on, you want to flip your case on its side and install your hard drive. Hard drives are installed into hard drive bays. So you install it and screw it into place. There are pre-routed cables for the power to the hard drive, called SATA cables. SATA carries data, and this is the power. It's called Molex3 power for the panel. Once all your wires are routed, you can install your back panel by sliding it onto the computer and fastening it with the screws provided. Once you're done with that, you flip it back on its side and continue by fastening the motherboard down to the standoffs. There are usually 8 holes around the motherboard where you put screws in and secure the motherboard in place so that it doesn't fall out when the computer is upright. Once your motherboard is fastened and secured, you can proceed to installing the graphics card. The graphics card requires a PCIe Express slot, which is one of these longer ones, because of the many pins what you do is line up these two portions with the two open gates and slide it into place, making sure not to damage any parts. And then you want to push until you hear a click. Then fasten the graphics card with the provided screws. Then you run power for an 8-pin connector for the graphics card. It has a lot of intensive processes that it needs to do, so it's very power hungry. After that's plugged in, you can proceed to plugging in all the peripherals, such as USB ports, fan connectors, NVMe headers, SATA ports, and the like. If you don't know where your component goes, there's small words explaining where each component goes. These connectors are responsible for the front power button, for any power to any LEDs in the system. After you've plugged up all the computers, you want to stand the case on the side and add your final cover. This is a performance case in which you can see all the components working. So it has a glass side. More often than not, your sides will be regular metal or aluminum. Which all get mounted and secured into place. After everything is secured, you add your power cable and your computer's ready. This guide doesn't show you how to install an operating system or how to install any drivers. This is purely a show of building a computer that you can connect to a monitor.